6 months. That's how long Zara Mitchell, a talented black designer, spent hand-stitching 3,000 Akoya pearls onto $45,000 worth of Mikado silk. 6 months of her dreams, her future, her entire reputation sewn into a wedding dress that was supposed to change everything for her. She was kneeling on the marble floor of the most expensive bridal suite in California, making final adjustments, when Olivia Hartwell, the bride, suddenly stumbled. Champagne splashed across the pristine white fabric. But that wasn't the worst part. As Zara tried to save her work, Olivia shoved her back and said those words that cut deeper than any blade. "You're ruining everything, just like your people always ruin everything they touch." Then, with her friends filming and laughing, Olivia grabbed the bodice and tore it, the sound of fabric ripping, of pearls scattering across marble like broken teeth, echoed through that luxury suite like a gunshot. Zara stood there, frozen, watching 6 months of her life destroyed in seconds. Olivia smiled her influencer smile and threatened to ruin Zara's career completely unless she remade the dress for free. But what Olivia didn't know was that at that exact moment, the door was opening, and the man walking in was Jun the Reaper Kang, a Korean mafia boss who had just lost his own sister to the same kind of cruelty. What happened next changed everything. Before we begin the story, comment below where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about karma, love, and hidden truths move you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The Grand Meridian Hotel stood like a monument to excess on the California coast, its marble floors reflecting the kind of wealth that most people only saw in magazines. On the 14th floor, in the largest bridal suite the hotel offered, Zara Mitchell knelt on those same marble floors, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the hem of a wedding dress that had consumed 6 months of her life. 6 months of hand-stitching 3,000 Akoya pearls. 6 months of shaping Mikado silk into something that looked like it had been spun from moonlight itself. 6 months of her reputation, her future, her dreams sewn into every invisible seam. "Just a little higher on the left side," Zara murmured, more to herself than to Olivia Hartwell, who stood above her like a marble statue draped in $45,000 worth of fabric and ambition. Zara's natural curls were pulled back into a sleek bun, professional and precise, because she had learned early in her career that her hair, her skin, her very presence in these spaces required twice the perfection and half the confidence. She had learned to make herself smaller in rooms like this. Olivia scrolled through her phone, barely acknowledging the woman at her feet. Behind her, 3 friends lounged on the velvet sofa, champagne flutes catching the afternoon light that poured through floor-to-ceiling windows. They were filming everything, of course. Every moment curated for content, every angle calculated for maximum engagement. "This is going to get me to 2 million followers," Olivia said, her voice carrying that particular tone of certainty that came from never having been told no. "The dress reveal alone will break the internet." Zara said nothing. She had learned that too. Let them talk. Let them dream their influencer dreams. Just finish the work, get paid the remaining $22,500, and leave before the mask slipped. But Zara didn't know that 3 floors below, in the hotel's private art gallery, a man in a charcoal gray suit was examining a collection of textile installations. Jun Kang moved through the gallery with the careful deliberation of someone who had learned to notice everything, to miss nothing. Because missing things got people killed in his world. He paused in front of a piece titled Fragments of Minso, a collection of torn fabric reconstructed with gold thread. His sister's name, his dead sister's name, displayed in a gallery like a prayer he couldn't answer. The gallery owner was saying something about the artist, about trauma and resilience, about how the Korean tradition of kintsugi could be applied to textiles. But June wasn't listening anymore. He was remembering Minso at 23, crying in their mother's kitchen because another design house had rejected her, had told her that her aesthetic didn't fit their brand vision, which they both knew meant her face didn't fit their vision. He was remembering her at 25, thinner, quieter, the light dimming behind her eyes. He was remembering her at 26, gone. Back in the bridal suite, Zara stood, her knees aching from the marble. "I think we're finished," she said, reaching for her leather portfolio. "The dress is perfect. You just need to—" Olivia turned suddenly, and what happened next would later be described by her friends as an accident. A terrible accident. But Zara saw it in slow motion. The deliberate shift of weight, the calculated stumble, the champagne glass tilting with theatrical precision. The golden liquid arced through the air like a curse, splashing across the pristine white silk. "Oh my God," one of the friends gasped, but she was smiling. They were all smiling. The cameras were still recording. Zara lunged forward, her hands reaching for the fabric, for salvage, for any possibility of saving 6 months of her life. But Olivia pushed her back with surprising force. "Don't touch it," Olivia hissed. "You're making it worse. You're ruining everything, just like your people always ruin everything they touch." The words hung in the air like smoke. The friends stopped smiling. Even they knew that particular line shouldn't be crossed on camera. But Olivia wasn't done. Her perfectly manicured hands gripped the bodice of the dress, and for one crystalline moment, Zara thought she was trying to remove it, to save it. Then Olivia pulled. The sound of 3,000 hand-sewn pearls ripping free from Mikado silk was like bones breaking. Pearls scattered across the marble floor like teeth from a shattered smile, each small bounce echoing in the sudden silence of the suite. Zara stood frozen, her hands still outstretched, watching 6 months of her life disintegrate in real time. The dress hung in tatters from Olivia's shoulders, silk torn like paper, the bodice gaping open to reveal the destruction beneath. "Oops," Olivia said, and she was smiling again. That influencer smile that had sold 1,000 products to 1,000,000 followers who would never know what kind of person hid behind the perfectly filtered facade. "I guess you'll have to fix it. For free, obviously, since this was clearly your fault. The champagne stain, the tear, all of it. Your sloppy work." Zara's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her throat had closed around words that couldn't form, around a scream that had nowhere to go. She could feel tears burning behind her eyes, hot and shameful, because she had promised herself she wouldn't cry in front of people like this. She had promised herself she was stronger than this. "Actually," Olivia continued, her voice taking on that sweet, poisonous tone that meant she was about to twist the knife deeper. "If you don't fix this by next week, I'm going to tell everyone that you sabotaged my wedding, that you were jealous, unprofessional, that you deliberately ruined my dress because you couldn't handle working with someone of my caliber. My 2 million followers will make sure you never work in this industry again." One of the friends giggled nervously. Another adjusted her phone, making sure the angle captured Zara's devastation in perfect high definition. Zara looked down at the pearls scattered across the floor, each one representing hours of her labor, her hope, her foolish belief that talent and dedication could overcome the simple fact that rooms like this were never meant for women who looked like her. Her reflection stared back at her from the polished marble, distorted and broken. She didn't hear the door to the suite open. She didn't notice the sudden change in air pressure, the way the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in an instant. But Olivia noticed. Olivia's smile faltered, her eyes focusing on something behind Zara, and for the first time since Zara had met her, Genuine fear flickered across that perfect face. Jing Kang stood in the doorway, flanked by two men in black suits who looked like they had been carved from granite and dressed by Italian tailors. He had heard everything from the hallway. Every word, every cruel inflection. Because the universe had a strange way of putting you exactly where you needed to be when ghosts demanded attention. He had been walking past, heading back to his car, trying to shake the memory of his sister's name in that gallery, when he heard the sound of fabric tearing, a sound he remembered from Min-so's apartment, that last terrible month, when she had destroyed her own work in fits of despair that no amount of his money or power could fix. He had been too late for Min-so, but he wasn't too late for this. Jun's eyes moved slowly across the scene. The torn dress, the scattered pearls, the woman on her knees, her natural curls escaping from their professional prison, her shoulders shaking with suppressed sobs. The blonde in designer heels, champagne glass still in hand, phone cameras still recording. Then his gaze fell on something else. A black moleskin notebook lying on the floor near Zara's discarded portfolio, fallen open to a page of sketches. Dress designs with notes written in the margins. And some of those notes were in Korean, the handwriting careful and precise, the same way Min-so used to annotate her work. Jun picked up the notebook with the kind of reverence most people reserved for religious texts. He flipped through the pages slowly, seeing talent that had been nurtured through hardship, creativity that had survived in hostile soil, the same desperate excellence his sister had poured into work that was never quite good enough for people who had already decided she didn't belong. When he looked up, his face was perfectly calm, perfectly still, the way it always was right before he made someone disappear. "Who?" he said, his voice so quiet that everyone in the room had to stop breathing to hear it. "Did this?" Olivia's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on the marble floor and mixing with the scattered pearls in a constellation of broken things. She knew who Jin Kang was. Everyone on the West Coast who moved in certain circles knew who Jin Kang was, knew the stories whispered in private clubs and luxury penthouses, knew that men like him didn't ask questions twice. It was an accident," Olivia stammered, her influencer confidence evaporating like morning fog. "The dress, it was faulty. She didn't—" Jun raised one hand, a simple gesture, barely more than a slight lift of his fingers, but it cut through Olivia's words like a blade through silk. Silence fell so completely that Zara could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. He turned to Zara, and his expression softened in a way that made him look almost human, almost vulnerable. "How long did you work on this?" Zara's voice came out broken, barely a whisper. 6 months. "And she paid you?" "Half. 22,500 upfront. She said she'd pay the rest on delivery." Zara gestured helplessly at the destroyed dress. "I needed this job. This was supposed to be my breakthrough, my portfolio piece, the work that would finally prove I belonged." Jun nodded slowly, understanding passing between them in a language older than words. He had seen this story before, lived adjacent to it, watched it kill his sister one rejection at a time until she couldn't carry the weight anymore. He removed his suit jacket, $8,000 worth of Italian tailoring, and draped it over Zara's shoulders with a gentleness that seemed impossible from a man rumored to have ordered executions over dinner. "My sister was like you," he said, his voice pitched low so only Zara could hear. "Min-so. She was a designer too, talented beyond measure. They destroyed her, these people with their casual cruelty and their pretty smiles. They destroyed her because she didn't look like what they thought success should look like, because her face didn't match their vision of who deserved to create beauty." Zara looked up at him, tears finally spilling down her cheeks, and saw grief that matched her own rage. June turned back to Olivia, and the softness vanished from his face like it had never existed. "You're going to do exactly 3 things, and you're going to do them right now, in this room, in front of witnesses. First, you're going to transfer the full payment you owe this artist, plus $100,000 in damages. Not for the dress. For the disrespect. For the racism you tried to disguise as quality control. For thinking your money made you untouchable. You can't just—" Olivia started, but one of June's men stepped forward, and she went quiet. "Second," June continued, his voice never rising above conversational volume, but somehow filling the entire suite with its weight. "You're going to post a video explaining exactly what you did. No filters, no editing, no spin. You're going to tell your 2 million followers that you destroyed an artist's work out of spite and prejudice. And you're going to do it with the same cameras that recorded her humiliation." Olivia's friends were already backing toward the door, phones tucked away, suddenly very interested in being anywhere else. "And third," June said, leaning in close enough that Olivia could see her own terrified reflection in his dark eyes, "you will never work in this city again. I own galleries. I fund exhibitions. I sit on boards at fashion houses you dream about walking into. And I'm going to make sure that every door you approach closes before you reach it. Not through violence, not through threats. Just through the same quiet, systematic exclusion that women like her face every single day." He straightened, adjusting his cufflinks with practiced precision. "The difference is, you'll deserve it." Olivia's hands shook as she pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling across the screen as she navigated to her banking app. Zara watched, still kneeling among the pearls, as the notification appeared on her own phone. "Transfer received. $122,500. But June wasn't finished. June bent down and carefully began collecting pieces of the torn dress, his movements deliberate and respectful, as if he were gathering fragments of something sacred. His men watched in silence, understanding without words that this moment meant something beyond business, beyond the usual calculus of power and fear that governed their world. "This work," June said, examining a section of the bodice where pearls still clung to the silk despite the violence done to it. "This is art. Real art. The kind my sister used to create before they convinced her it wasn't worth anything." He looked at Zara, still wrapped in his jacket, still surrounded by the debris of her dreams. "You're going to work for me now. Not for me, with me. The Kang Foundation funds artists who deserve platforms they'll never get through traditional channels. You'll have a studio in the Arts District, full funding for 5 years, complete creative control. No strings, no compromises. Just make your art." Zara stared at him, unable to process the sudden reversal of her entire reality. "Why? You don't even know me." "Because no one did this for Minso," June said simply. "And I won't let history repeat itself when I have the power to change it." He turned back to Olivia, who had gone pale, her phone still clutched in her trembling hands. "The video. Now. Or I make a phone call that changes your life in ways you can't even imagine." Olivia lifted her phone with shaking hands, switching to her front-facing camera. Her friends had already fled. She was alone with her consequences for the first time in her carefully curated life. "My name is Olivia Hartwell," she began, her voice cracking. "And I need to tell you what I just did." 3 months passed. The video went viral, but not in the way Olivia had spent her entire adult life chasing. Brands dropped her within hours. Venues canceled her wedding booking when they learned who she was. Her follower count plummeted as people watched her tearful confession. watched her explain in her own words how she had destroyed a black artist's work and tried to use her platform as a weapon. Zara opened her studio on a Tuesday morning in October, the fall light streaming through industrial windows onto cutting tables and dress forms and bolts of fabric in every color imaginable. Her first collection, lacerated silk, sold out before it even opened to the public. Each piece incorporated intentional tears reconstructed with gold thread, a visible history of damage transformed into something more beautiful than it had been before. On the night of the gallery opening, June appeared quietly at the back of the room, holding a large box wrapped in simple black paper. Zara opened it to find the wedding dress, but transformed. Korean textile artists had reconstructed it using kintsugi principles, filling every tear with gold leaf, replacing the lost pearls with black obsidian that caught the light like stars. It was no longer a symbol of her humiliation. It had become a monument to survival. In Korea, June explained, his voice soft in the crowded gallery, we believe that broken things become more valuable when we honor their scars instead of hiding them. You didn't need saving, Zara. You just needed someone to see what you were worth. Zara touched the golden seams, tears streaming down her face, her natural curls now worn loose and proud, a crown she no longer felt the need to hide. Your sister, what was her name? Minseo. She would have loved meeting you. She would have loved knowing that at least one story ended differently. Every dress I make, Zara whispered, I'll make thinking of her, thinking of every artist who never got their tungkam. Chun nodded, the closest thing to a smile touching his features. As he turned to leave, Zara hung the dress in the center of her gallery beneath a simple plaque that read, For Minseo and all the artists who never had a reaper. Across town, in a nearly empty apartment, Olivia stared at her phone. 47 followers remaining. Her last post was 89 days old. The comments were still coming, but she had stopped reading them. Meanwhile, in the arts district, a line of clients stretched around the block, waiting to meet the artist who turned her breaking into gold. Zara stood in her studio, surrounded by fabric and light and possibility, finally smiling with her whole face, her whole heart, finally free. If this story moved you, pause for a moment and reflect. Have you ever been underestimated because of how you look? Have you witnessed someone being torn down by people who should have lifted them up? Have you ever wondered if broken things can truly become more beautiful than they were before? Share your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read every single one. And if you believe in stories about justice, resilience, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe to the channel.